Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Chris Weidenbar. Joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is leading aircraft woman Monica Verma. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. We would particularly like to acknowledge representatives of the Cumberland RSL sub-branch who are joining us this evening. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors and by students on behalf of the following schools: from New South Wales, Toongabbie Christian College and St Patrick's Primary School, East Gosford, and from Western Australia, Dalkeith Primary School. I now invite all who are able to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you. Students, please be seated. Anyone else who requires a seat, please also sit. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway lands. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lance Sergeant John Reginald Granville Nobbs. John Nobbs was born on the 27th of August 1911, the first son born to Reginald and Edna Nobbs. The Nobbs lived at the family property of Granville Park near Chinchilla in the Western Downs region of Queensland, where they were established farmers and graziers. John Nobbs' grandfather, also named John Nobbs, was a prominent pioneer of Granville, the first mayor of Granville, former Liberal Party whip, early supporter of women's suffrage, and founder of the Royal Australian Historical Society. The young John Nobbs enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 3rd of November 1939 at Toowoomba. His brother Charles had enlisted just a few days earlier at Brisbane and would soon be Lance Sergeant, operating in the Artillery Training Unit. John, who was a former member of the Chinchilla Light Horse Troop, was allotted to the 2nd 9th Battalion. He left Sydney for overseas service in May 1940. Arriving in Scotland in mid-June, he was transferred to what was then designated the 71st Battalion, a unit raised in the United Kingdom that month for Australian troops who had been sent to help bolster the garrison after the fall of France. In mid-October, a captured Japanese soldier provided information that a Japanese counter-attack was going to occur. The 2nd 32nd Battalion hurriedly prepared its position, and in the early hours of the 17th of October, a Japanese raid on the area began. Bombers come over at intervals, causing casualties, and news was received that 100 enemy soldiers had attempted a landing near the mouth of the Song River. Allied defenders accounted for all but a few stragglers, but when this attack continued with escorted bombers, the 2nd 32nd were ordered to move to defend Finchhaven airstrip. During the fighting that night, Lance Sergeant Nobbs was killed in action. While his brothers Charles and Bruce would survive to return home, John Nobbs' body was buried at Finchhaven War Cemetery, with a headstone bearing the inscription chosen by his grieving family: "We will remember his noble sacrifice that we might live." He was 32 years old. Among the death notices that appeared in the newspapers as reminders of those fallen in the war, his sister Enid and Edna cited the lines of the poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow: "There is no death, what seems so is transition. This life is mortal breath, is but a suburb of the life Elysian, whose portal we call death." John Nobbs' name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Sergeant John Reginald Granville Nobbs, who gave his life for us, for our freedom, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the ease condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them. lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a good evening.